So raise your glass, even though he's not the best, but at least he made the top 5.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Lynn I Gossip. I'm your commissioner number 5. Co-hosting today is Lonnie. Thank you, Lonnie, for showing back up.
You betcha.
And our guest today is Mike Roth. Mike Roth is a podcaster. He has a podcast that he does right here in the Villages called Open Forum in the Villages. Does a weekly podcast for everyone.
Right.
And he talks to people of interest here in the Villages and topics.
Right. We've been doing the show for about a year and a half now.
Okay.
And it's been very successful. I started it because a couple of my friends bugged me. It kept saying, Mike, how do I do a podcast? Can you teach me how to do a podcast? Neither one of them started the podcast. and
you talked him out of it?
No. I said, well, I'm not going to teach two people privately. That's ridiculous. It's going to take too much of my time. So I decided to do it as a course at the Enrichment Academy. I'm actually teaching it again in February.
Okay.
And we do it over 3 weeks, and we teach people to go from ground zero to how to have a reasonably good podcast, and the whys and the hows, and a little bit of the technical of how to get it up on the air and making it sound good.
Has number 5 attended your class?
Number 5 hasn't attended.
I
Okay.
need to.
All right. Tell us your background. Why would these two people contact you and say, hey, teach us how to do a podcast?
Okay, for the last 25 years before I came to the Villages 6 years ago, I ran a sales training company in Cincinnati, Ohio. And as a marketing promotion, I had done radio, a lot of radio commercials, and they worked. But I was looking for something that was more convenient and cheaper. And I started to do a podcast called Cincinnati Business Talk, where I would interview business leaders in Cincinnati. I picked the ones that I wanted to do business with. And I would call them and say, hey, or their secretary, and say, would you like to be on my radio show? Almost everyone I called said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And so the first year I did 2 shows a week. It has over 90,000 views. So
Wow.
it was a pretty successful thing.
That's where you learned all the ins and outs of podcasting.
Yeah,
and started kind of from scratch, not knowing.
It was an easier time to learn it in 2014 than it is today. There were fewer podcasts out there, and it just made a lot of sense. And I retired that. I never thought I'd do it again. And then when I found myself trapped into teaching this course for my friends, I said, well, I better get up to date on what the current things are going on in podcasting. And so I started the podcast Open Forum in the Villages. My first episode was with Don Wiley, and we talked about drones and what's happening in the Villages politically.
For those that don't know Don Wiley, those few people, what's his...
He's a commissioner now in the Sumter County, and he still runs the drone club, and he's the guy who creates the construction videos.
Right.
The screen name of his podcast goes under Gold
Wing Nut. Gold Wing Nut, yes.
Wing Nut,
yeah,
yes.
so you see him all the time. I mean, his stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, it's great stuff. It's great
makes sense that you interviewed him first.
I like how he kind of skipped over. I like how he started a podcast and invited people that he wanted to do business on. So really, he's growing his business while he's.
I replaced all of my radio commercials. I spent,
That must have been a great success, though.
It was.
So the classes you teach, do you charge for those?
The Enrichment Academy, yes. I think it's either $60 or $80.
And how does a person
$20 for the materials?
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. And how does a person find you? And if they live in the Villages, hey, I'd like to start a podcast. How do they find you to find out the information on that class?
Go to the Enrichment Academy website and look up the technology courses, and Podcasting 101 for beginners is listed there.
All right.
It's in February.
And it is a chargeable class, but you don't really have to be a village resident.
No, you pay a little bit more if you're a non-villager. It's mainly taught in the Lake Meona Recreation Center, where they have, a couple of years ago, completely redone 2 of the large meeting rooms to make them technical training rooms.
Okay, so it's a 3-week course. Is it once a week?
Once a week. It's about a 90-minute session.
Okay.
although we've never actually finished in 90 minutes. I try to answer all the questions. We start with why do a podcast? Why do an audio podcast versus a video podcast? You essentially do an audio podcast without buying any equipment if you're willing to deal with the online services that handle the recording and editing, which are a little bit limiting. A rank amateur beginner who doesn't know whether they're going to go beyond 4 episodes.
Right.
More than 75% of the podcasts that are put out for distribution never go beyond the 4th episode.
It's a little bit of work. You got to enjoy it.
You got to enjoy it.
Hobby,
it's got to be a hobby. You have to. For most people, it'll never be a business. My podcast is making a little bit of money.
Good.
I do it on a subscription basis. People are free to make a subscription and make a monthly donation of $3, $5, $10. And I have a major supporter who also wants people to get his word out, and that's Dr. Craig Curtis.
And what's he trying to get out? Give him a plug here. Why not?
Okay, yeah.
Paying you money.
Dr. Curtis runs an Alzheimer's research company here in the Villages called K2 Research. They have a shortage of patients for the studies. And he comes on the show and he gives an Alzheimer's tip every week. And we do a couple of full 30-minute shows with him every year. In terms of recommending equipment, I give people a recommendation of equipment that I use because I know it sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, it's a minimal cost. I didn't spend $300 a microphone. I spent $120 a microphone for the good cardioid microphones. You don't have to buy a brand name Shure microphone because it's the professional grade.
Right.
You can spend $300 for a microphone. You can spend $1,200 for a microphone. But when you get to you can spend $10 for a microphone. But when you get to about $100, $120, you've got a good condenser microphone that's a cardioid pickup pattern, so it's going to mainly pick up what's in front and almost nothing behind it. The course is in February. You have plenty of time to enroll. There are at least eight or 10 seats.
Great.
Eight seats available.
Okay.
And you get enough information and a handout that if you follow it, you can easily get a very good podcast on the air.
Well, great. Well, sign up for that course.
Yeah.
Thanks to him, we've got the best league to play in. It's not a boast, just a toast to number 5.